Welcome back to our blending mode postcard art tutorial. Um, as we build this, you just want to have a lot of fun and do a lot of experimentation. Following along with what I'm doing, well, you don't have to do exactly what I'm doing. I'm just showing you some possibilities, and we never know what's going to happen with blending modes. Sometimes you don't have an image that's all that great, and so adding some texture like we have is ideal, and building on it. You just need to experiment with it and don't be afraid to do several different versions. If something doesn't work out on a layer, you can turn the visibility off. Now I noticed something about my image. There's some dark areas, and there's a way to fix that, but it takes something that is a permanent change. For me, in Photoshop, I like to make sure that everything is completely editable. Because if I do something that is a permanent change, well, let's say the boss comes along and says, oh, that's really great, but can you change this? And it's something that, well, I've just destroyed what the original was, so now I've got to go back to my original picture, replace it, redo the whole thing. And I like everything to be editable so that it is not a problem. So there's a permanent change that I want to make on this with an adjustment. And you don't have to do this, but this works really well for a picture with bright light and harsh shadows. There's a lot of detail in there we're not even aware of. So what I want to do is take and duplicate that layer. The background layer can be duplicated, or any layer really. If you click and drag this, going to the layers panel, click and drag that layer all the way down until you get to this little icon at the bottom of the layer panel, and it's like a little new piece of paper. Okay, now pop that up. So if I let go, it just makes a copy. This is the little icon that you drag it on top of to create a new layer. Well, if we're dragging an existing layer, it automatically makes a copy of it. So if I go under Image Adjustments, this is what I want to do. We're kind of stepping aside. Not all pictures are going to need this. Shadows and Highlights. So I'm going under Image, Adjustments, Shadows and Highlights. And if you don't see the options here, then you want to show more options. Okay, so let's say I've played around with this quite a bit, and so if I move these a little bit more, well, then it can make adjustments to it. So I can turn the preview on and off to see where I am now and where I was before, and you can see there's a lot more detail. But I kind of want to tone down the amount in the shadows and the tone and the radius, since I don't want it to drastic change, but I do want some changes in it, so not quite as much. Click OK, and again, it's a matter of the copy has got the changes, which is a permanent change, and if I turn that off, I still have my original background underneath. Okay, so I can turn the visibility of the background off. Let's turn that texture back on, and yeah, I'm getting a lot more detail in those dark areas. Now I wanted to bring over a picture that I had before, and sometimes these pictures do or don't work out. It has a little bit of water on it, and I'm not sure that this is actually going to work. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. Opening this one up in Photoshop. Let's get there. And if I select all or Command Control A, then I've selected all the pixels. This is a large picture, so I know I don't have to resize it. Copy it, or Command Control C. Go to my postcard, and under Edit, it's either Command or Control V to paste. Alright, so it put it under my texture, so I'm going to push that up towards the top, and it's a rather large picture. We're going to do what we did before. Okay, and I want to, under Edit, Transform, Scale, but I could use my key commands, Shift Command or Shift Control T. And that gets me a bounding box again. So it made it a bit smaller for me. Alright, so I like that, and if I blend it, let's see if it does. Well, it's kind of disappearing with that one, and I don't like the heart very much. I would probably take that off. Lighten, overlay. I just start working with these to see if anything. No, while that's an interesting image, it's not exactly what I'm after. So you may get some really strange results that may delight you, or like for this particular one, yeah, I could use that for something else, but I'm going to turn that layer visibility off. I'm not getting rid of it because I might use that for some other project with this whole thing later. So I don't have to use that, not liking that very much. But I do want to work with the color a little bit more to see if can get something more interesting as a result. Okay, zooming in. Let's say I want a new layer because I'd like to get some color in here. And if I click on, of course, my foreground color to set it, I get the color picker. Let's get some sort of green going in here, but I want it to be like an intense, lighter green, like a mint green. Okay, you can pick any color that you want and experiment with this. And I want to fill, so under Edit, Fill, let's go with the foreground color at 100%. Click OK. And then I can use this to do some blending as well. So wow, that's kind of intense. Multiply just kind of covers it over. So you have to experiment with it. It just depends on what you do as to how this is going to affect it. Under Hue, it just changes overall, like a tonal range that's black and white, plus the color itself is taking over. So that's an interesting effect as well. But I think I like the intensity. Let's see, without it, with and without it. I've gone with soft light. And if I still don't want it quite as intense, I can lower the opacity so the effect of it is a little bit lower. So do a lot of experimenting with these things. And then last but not least, I'd like to add some text to this. So I'm going to go and use the Type tool right here. Click on it, give it a second, because sometimes it takes a second for this Type tool to engage. In the Options panel, you'll notice that there are some common things we can change, like the typeface, which these are the system fonts that you would have, or the fonts that you have available on your system, plus a style, and some of your fonts may or may not have various styles available. You can also change the size of it. This is rather large, which is what I actually want. And again, we have a number here. We can type something in. We've got a drop-down box to select a size. It only goes up to 72 point. And we also have a control here where we can click on the icon next to the number. Any of this works in Photoshop, and it also works in Adobe Flash as well. Clicking and dragging, I can make a change to the size, that text size. So let's say I want it at like 140, I guess. Let's see. And I like Myriad Pro Bold. Don't use something too dainty on a very busy background. I like something very bold. Don't be afraid of it. Don't use typefaces that are just going to disappear into this. And typefaces that are script or very fancy and you do all capital letters is illegible, so watch out for legibility. Let's put capital letters. I knew I wanted this right here, fresh. Okay, and then to move it, yeah, I've got it so that it's in the center. And if I want more controls, I've got a character and a paragraph panel to work with if I want some things specific to happen with regards to those. But to make it so that I change the position of this, then we're going to go up to the Move tool here and click on it. So then I can move that in any direction. And I've got some helper settings in Photoshop so that it's actually centering it for me, which I actually like. You don't have to do that. You can place this, your text anywhere you want. And you don't have to have text on the postcard, but I would suggest experimenting with it at least. I would like to change the color of this. What it takes is going back to the text tool. Now selecting your text, you might end up clicking somewhere else on the page, and that can be a problem because it will make another layer. The text will always make its own little layer, and to edit it, I want to show you a little something. You see my icon here that I have, it's for text, and it's got a little dotted line around it. If you hover close enough to the text, then that little bounding box or dotted outline goes away. Now that means that I can actually select my text if I want to, because otherwise, if I don't, okay, if I use my text tool elsewhere, let's undo that. If I use my text tool and I think I'm grabbing the text and I click and drag, no, that doesn't do it. Okay. If I click and drag without having grabbed my text like that, then I might mistakenly make a new text box and a new layer with text. Okay, so I don't want that. All right, so just going to go ahead and get rid of that by dragging it to the trash. If I highlight this, okay, now I have access. Look at the options up here at the top. The color, I can choose some other color if I want to. Alright, I like white, and I want to blend that. Yeah, I have some ideas on it initially. Now it's disappearing with that. Overlay, which is interesting, but it's not intense enough, so I want to actually make a duplicate of it. Okay, and that becomes more intense, or I could go back to normal, and then if I want to go lower with the opacity, then I still have two layers. One has opacity on it, the other one has an overlay on it, and so if I turn that overlay off, it's kind of melting in, but it gives it a little bit of interest there. Okay, so this is my postcard as it is. I like the way it is. Just do a lot of experimentation and have some fun.